Characters like Hisoka and Chrollo are a good example of this. Their genius is not to the same degree as Gon and Killua's, but they are still geniuses as well. Hey, what's up everybody? It's LeeLos, and today we're talking about why Hisoka versus the Zoldyck family is obvious. Stay steady in pursuit of your dreams and goals. You're born to win, you're made for greatness, and I definitely believe in you guys. Keep up the great work each and every day. So Hisoka versus the Zoldyck family is a battle between a generational genius who's absolutely addicted to fighting powerful opponents at their strongest versus the strongest family of assassins in the world of Hunter x Hunter. Today we're going to analyze every single power-up and ability these two titans have displayed to figure out overall who's more powerful than who between these two monsters. We'll start by analyzing how Hisoka would do fighting each member of the Zoldyck family 1v1, and we'll finish the video with what would happen if they all just jumped Hisoka. First off, we have Hisoka versus Malluki and Kalluto Zoldyck. These two are the weakest siblings of the Zoldyck family. That being said, there's a few scenes worth discussing when it comes to gauging Malluki's strength. According to the Zoldyck family gatekeeping janitor, if you can't open at least one testing gate, then you're deemed unworthy to enter into the Zoldyck estate. Seeing how even their janitor is strong enough to open one gate without living on the estate property, meanwhile Malluki is worthy enough to live within the estate itself, this implies that Malluki is at least strong enough to open one of the testing gates as well, which is a total of 4 tons. This strength scaling would also apply to all of the butlers who live on the Zoldyck estate property. Considering that even the junior butlers have superhuman strength, the idea of Malluki and the butlers opening the testing gates is worth discussion. That being said, there is a scene where Malluki shows fear after being threatened by no Nen start of series Killua, showing us that in the grand scheme of things, Malluki is kind of a fodder character, and it's debatable as to whether or not he even knows Nen or has Hatsu abilities. We don't know if Malluki went through Zoldyck training to the same extent that Killua did. During the election arc, we get to see a glimpse into the Zoldyck family dynamics from Killua's perspective. One implication from the Zoldyck relationship diagram is that most of the family was neglected except for Killua. Considering that the Zoldyck family is twistedly pragmatic and Killua is the most talented Zoldyck in history, the truth is Killua is simply a wiser investment of training, time, and energy than Malluki is, especially from the Zoldyck family business perspective. To put Killua's talent into perspective, being the most talented Zoldyck in history means that Killua has the potential to surpass every one of his ancestors, even Maha and Zig Zoldyck. Maha Zoldyck was so insanely powerful that Zeno states the only person who ever survived a battle against him was Netero. Maha is Zeno's father. Another implication from the Zoldyck family diagram is that Maha is no longer directly involved in the Zoldyck family or the family business, meaning this fight happened in the range of many years to decades ago, while Netero was either in his prime or simply much closer to his prime than the old man Netero that we see throughout the series. Furthermore, we don't even know if Netero won this fight. We just know that Netero survived. He could have lost the battle, with surviving Maha being his best feat, or the fight could have ended in a draw. We know that Netero was the #1 strongest hunter for about 10 years straight, meaning after 10 years, or 50 years prior to the current story, someone surpassed Prime Netero's immense power. We don't know who that person was, but there's a real possibility that it was Maha Zoldyck, who was in his prime during this time period. All that being said, this narratively implies that Prime Maha Zoldyck was relative in power to Prime Netero, and he may have even surpassed him, with Killua's talent being so immense that he's capable of surpassing them both. A few members of the Zoldyck family are obsessed with the idea of Killua reaching his full potential, so much so that they allowed Illumi to put a Nen needle in his brain that forced Killua to run away from any enemy relative to him in power. And this obsession was so overwhelming that it was a big component in Killua choosing to run away from home at the beginning of the series. Considering the extreme obsessive behavior they've pushed on Killua throughout the entire series, the idea of Zeno and Silva neglecting Malluki's training while pushing Killua the hardest in training is not far from the actions they've already displayed. And finally, there's a possibility that Moluki completed the basics of assassin training as a child, then essentially stopped training once Killua was born. Now, Kalluto Zoldyck is Killua's younger brother. The details of Kalluto's life aren't explicitly stated, but it's implied that Kalluto was always eclipsed by Killua, with Kalluto being powerful, but overall still could never hold a candle to Killua even before Killua learned Nen. Not only does Zeno straight up state that Killua is special compared to his siblings, but Kalluto is depicted as only having a normal loving relationship with their mother. Kalluto joining the Phantom Troupe even after Silva specifically told his family to avoid the Phantom Troupe brings up some questions about the strength of their relationship as well. After joining the Phantom Troupe, Kalluto struggles to keep up with a rusty Phaeton fighting against base form Zazan, while Phaeton is just warming up, not even using Hatsu abilities of any kind. Meanwhile, all the other Phantom Troupe members, even the weaker members like Shalnark and Shizuku, were able to keep up with Phaeton's movements, with no stated problems at all, and they could still tell that Phaeton was weaker than his normal level of power. The warm-up power level of this rusty Phaeton was already so far above Kalluto's own level that it crushed Kalluto's confidence, and made him think that surpassing the members of the Phantom Troupe was a far-off, near-impossible goal. This shows us that the power level of many individual members of the Phantom Troupe, even while they're holding back and not using their Hatsu abilities, is still considerably above Kalluto's maximum power. Meanwhile, Hisoka, even before Postmortem Nen, is consistently narratively depicted as one of the top 3, if not the absolute strongest, member of the Phantom Troupe, only surpassed by Chrollo himself. In the recent chapters of Hunter x Hunter, Bono Lenoff and Shizuku both straight up admit that they would not be able to defeat Hisoka even if they used their Hatsu abilities. It should be noted that they both state Hisoka is a bad type matchup for them, but later in the arc, an experienced and powerful Nen user, Heinrei, states that a battle between Hisoka and the entire Phantom Troupe would be a clash between the two greats of their generation. Heinrei, being a self-admitted fanboy to the Phantom Troupe, is thinking this dialogue to himself, meaning he is not lying to fool anyone. This is extremely impressive narrative scaling for Hisoka, because a powerful Nen user Phantom Troupe fanboy in his mind is putting Postmortem Nen Hisoka on his own in the same tier as the entire Phantom Troupe combined. The highball interpretation of this scene is that Postmortem Nen Hisoka could actually defeat the entire Phantom Troupe on his own. The lowball interpretation of Postmortem Nen Hisoka's power backs this idea up even further. The lowest you can lowball Postmortem Nen Hisoka is to say that he is exactly equal to the newest version of Chrollo, who is far stronger than he's ever been before. Not only does Chrollo now have a bookmark ability, which, according to Chrollo, improved his hand-to-hand combat skills vastly, but now he has in the range of 1 to 3 different Postmortem Nen abilities, even though Chrollo himself has never died. That is because he already developed one Postmortem Nen ability, the Sun and Moon, that he used to defeat Hisoka. But he also had the ability of Shalnark and Troupe, 2 members of the Phantom Troupe that Hisoka kills immediately after his battle with Chrollo. Chrollo states that the Fortune Teller ability vanished from his book after the Fortune Teller died, but he never says anything about Troupe or Shalnark's abilities vanishing, meaning there's a real possibility that their abilities are still in his book, and that he now has 3 different Postmortem Nen abilities all at the same time. Despite Chrollo being stronger than he's ever been before, Chrollo states that if he fights this new version of Hisoka, there's a real possibility that Hisoka would defeat him. All that being said, even normal base form Hisoka scales massively above Miluki and Kalluto, even on their highest of interpretations. If we start by lowballing both of them, Miluki's best implied feat is narratively being strong enough to open the smallest testing gate, which is the same feat Start of Series Gon achieved mostly with one arm, not even knowing Nen, and having 0 formal martial arts training of any kind. So lowball, Miluki is relative to Start of Series no Nen Gon at the very beginning of Heaven's Arena. arena, and Kalluto is weaker than Killua, even though Kalluto's fighting abilities imply that they went through similar training. Despite growing up in the same home, receiving insane training from a young age, and even being mentored by Illumi directly, Kalluto never had enough talent to be Killua's rival. But Gon Freaksis, on the other hand, met Killua while Killua had a 9-year training head start from some of the absolute strongest characters in the series, and the moment Gon received any formal training instruction at all, he instantly became Killua's competitive rival. After 2 weeks of just sparring with Beanault, Gon had completely surpassed Phantom Troupe arc Killua, who had 9 years of training up to that point. This is proven because at the start of Greed Island, Gon and Killua working together were still weaker than just Beanault on his own. But after 2 weeks of sparring, Gon and Killua were both strong enough to defeat Beanault 1v1. To put that into perspective, after 2 weeks of just sparring, if this Greed Island Gon Freaksis fought the Gon and Killua from the Phantom Troupe arc, he would beat them both at the same time by himself. After defeating Beanault, Gon and Killua trained side by side in advanced Nen combat for 6 months on Greed Island, becoming many magnitudes more powerful, with Gon being Killua's competitive rival the entire time. And by the end of Greed Island, Gon actually surpasses Killua in attack power using his Hatsu rock ability. Seeing how Kalluto is continuously inferior to Killua, meanwhile Gon is Killua's competitive rival for an entire arc while they're both continuously getting stronger, you could make a very strong argument that Kalluto might not even be able to defeat post-Greed Island Gon. Lowball, Maluki is relative to Start of Heaven's Arena Gon, and Kalluto is relative to End of Greed Island Gon. Meanwhile, even base form, normal Hisoka, before he ever obtained Postmortem Nen, was already so powerful that he was relative to Chrollo, a man who held his own fighting Zeno and Silva Zoldyck at the same time. The strength gap between Maluki, Kalluto, and Hisoka is so massive that base form Hisoka, no Postmortem Nen Hisoka needed, could literally unalive both of them at the same time without even using his Hatsu abilities, heavily implied by Kalluto not even being able to follow Phaeton's movements while Phaeton was warming up, not using Hatsu abilities of any kind, and Maluki being implied to be weaker than Kalluto. Postmortem Nen Hisoka, it would not even be a fight. They would probably try and run away just sensing his aura, and he would one-shot them by throwing playing cards at them. Next we have Hisoka versus Killua. Now Killua, after the Chimera Ant arc, has grown so powerful that he actually is superior to Hisoka in speed. Killua's reaction speed is relative to the speed of lightning, making him so fast that the Royal Guard Yuppie couldn't even react to him. All that being said, Hunter x Hunter is a battle shonen that works differently than most battle shonen. Nen masters with more Nen battle experience defeat people that are stronger and faster than them all the time. This was stated in reference to Knuckle during the Chimera Ant arc, where it states Knuckle was a veteran of more than 5,000 Nen battles, and fighting opponents with unprecedented strength happened to Knuckle so frequently that it was no longer considered a rare occurrence for him. Morel further explains this concept to Killua, stating that in Nen combat, you often don't know what your opponent's abilities are, and one mistake can completely change the tide of a battle, meaning you cannot decide who will win a Nen battle just by looking at how much total aura a person has. All that being said, determining who is most likely to win a Nen battle is narratively based on the combination of a few different factors, and this has happened consistently throughout the majority of the series. Total aura capacity, aura output, creativity with your Nen ability, Nen battle experience, and overall fighting intelligence. These are the main factors that decide who is more likely to win a Nen battle. Essentially, in Nen combat, the person who is overall the more powerful Nen user is the character that is more likely to win. Nen combat is very similar to real-life martial arts. A black belt martial arts master can defeat a talented beginner even if the beginner martial artist is faster or stronger than the master. Nen works in the same way. A very experienced Nen master can defeat a talented beginner even if the beginner is stronger or faster than the Nen master. This is proven in Morel's fight against the squadron leader Chitu. Chitu being a squadron leader that was further amped by receiving a unique Hatsu ability. Before receiving this amp, Chitu was already so fast that Morel originally could not even hit his after image. Morel then, while at around 30% power, uses his superior battle experience and creativity with his Nen ability to effortlessly defeat Chitu while taking absolutely zero damage. Killua objectively has superior reaction speed to Hisoka. However, in terms of nearly all the other major components of Nen combat, those being total aura capacity, aura output, and overall Nen battle experience, there are numerous context clues that heavily imply that Hisoka is superior to Killua in these categories. According to statements from Knuckle and Bisky, aura capacity and aura output are both increased with time and training. Managing the multiple complex abilities of Nen combat and aura control is very difficult, and it takes time even for geniuses like Gon and Killua to master. Therefore, a lack of experience in Nen combat can make a massive difference in the outcome of a fight. Knuckle, for example, in his battle against Gon, simply due to having superior Nen combat experience, was able to accurately predict Gon's next attacks just by reading the flow of his aura. Gon and Killua are super geniuses, and just from their time in Greed Island, they were able to surpass many average pro hunters that were full-grown adults with decades of experience. But it's a completely different story altogether when you compare Gon and Killua to pro hunters that are full-grown adults and are geniuses as well on top of that. Characters like Hisoka and Chrollo are a good example of this. Their genius is not to the same degree as Gon and Killua's, but they are still geniuses as well, with Chrollo and Hisoka being much further along in their Nen mastery journey than Gon and Killua are. This was proven during the Chimera Ant arc, where Gon, even after completing more than a year's worth of Nen endurance training, condensed into a single month due to Bisky's Hatsu ability. Knuckles states that Gon's aura was still only at the level of a mid-ranking pro, not a high-tier pro, not the pinnacle of the verse, just a middle-ranking hunter, with Killua being Gon's rival, completing the exact same Nen endurance training at the exact same time as Gon. This would apply to him as well, considering the fact that developing aura capacity takes a long time, with Bisky stating just increasing your Ren by 10 minutes takes 1 month of constant training. The fact that Gon and Killua have more aura than many full-grown adult pro hunters, while Gon and Killua are literally children, is very impressive. The gap between Gon, Killua, and Hisoka's overall aura is further implied later in the Chimera Ant arc and during portions of the Election arc. Later in the Chimera Ant arc, it's stated that Gon has a total aura of 21,500, with Morel's aura being around 70,000, meaning Morel had more than 3 times as much total aura as Gon and Killua respectively, due to Killua completing the exact same aura training as Gon at the exact same time. Then, during the Election arc, it's stated that Morel and Nove are weaker than the Zodiac members. Hisoka does his own power scaling of the Zodiac and views himself as superior to numerous Zodiac members. Hisoka looks at 3 members of the Zodiac and gives them all a ranking. One he gives a 77, another an 85, another a 90, and he then gives the rank of 95 to Illumi. We don't get the exact details to what Hisoka's scale means, but numerous context clues heavily imply that he was measuring their overall total aura capacity. This was implied by Killua and numerous other characters multiple times throughout the series. Killua, after running from Pito, states to Netero that now that Killua has learned Nen, he can tell that Netero, Morel, and Nove are very powerful, but he still doesn't think that they can defeat Pito. This is in big contrast to Killua at the start of the series, who did not know Nen. Before learning Nen, Killua could not accurately tell how strong other Nen users were, and as a result, start of series Killua thought he could unalive Netero, but now he can recognize Netero's incredible power. Netero himself is also shown analyzing Pito's power just by looking at Pito, and is able to tell Pito is stronger than he is just at a glance. Even Cult was able to look at Netero's Ren and predicted that he was weaker than the Royal Guard. And finally, Gon in the manga also has a scene speaking very specifically about sensing aura. After healing from his transformation, has lost the ability to see and sense aura. This was confirmed in a conversation between Gon, Jing, and Mito, in which Gon states when he spoke to Jing, Gon could not sense Jing's aura at all. But if Gon had his original powers, he would have sensed Jing's immense power and would have likely been so impressed with it that he would have followed Jing to the Dark Continent. But because Gon couldn't sense Nen, he decided to stay with Mito and get an education instead. Seeing how numerous Nen users all throughout the series are able to sense and get a gist for a person's overall aura level just by looking at them, this gives good evidence to suggest that Hisoka was doing the same thing. All this being said, when you put the context clues together, you get a scale that tells you the narrative difference between Hisoka and Killua very clearly. Morel has 3 times as much aura as Gon and Killua, with the Zodiac all being stronger than Morel. This does not guarantee that they all have more aura than him, but it does imply that the weaker Zodiac members at least have relative amounts of aura to Morel, and it's very likely that the stronger members of the Zodiac have considerably more aura than Morel, especially when you consider that Morel was amazed just looking at Netero's Ren, not even using his Hatsu abilities. Meanwhile, the Zodiac are all Netero's sparring partners, with the stronger members like Jing, a confirmed top 5 Nen user, very likely being strong enough to hold their own with Netero, even when Netero uses his Hatsu abilities. If we highball Morel and say that he had as much aura as the weakest Zodiac member Hisoka scaled, that being the Rabbit Zodiac, Paon, someone Hisoka ranked a 77, with Hisoka being the implied 100, considering that Morel's total aura was a 70,000, that would make Hisoka's total aura 23% greater than Morel's, giving Hisoka a total aura of 86,100. This is a highball Morel. You could make a good argument that the Rabbit Zodiac actually has considerably more aura than Morel, because she was already confirmed to be stronger than Morel. Assuming the Rabbit Zodiac has more aura than Morel does, this would create our middle ball scale for base Hisoka, placing Hisoka's total aura closer to the 100,000 range. A highball Hisoka would be in the range of having twice as much aura as Morel, meaning the Rabbit Zodiac was ranked a 77, then Morel would be in the 50 to 60 range on that same scale. Seeing how Hisoka is barely impressed by characters that all scale considerably above Morel, this line of scaling is worth deep consideration. Narratively, to put it into better perspective, Gon and Killua are in between the range of middle to high level pros. There's a ranking system to hunters going from 1 to 3 stars. Gon and Killua don't even have a single star yet. Single star hunters like Morel are elite pro veterans that even Netero respects. The Zodiac are near the absolute pinnacle of power as pro hunters, so strong that they are sparring partners for Netero. And Hisoka is so strong that he hunts Zodiac level fighters for fun and isn't even impressed by a large portion of them. Killua is faster than Hisoka, but narratively, Hisoka is the more powerful Nen user overall. All that being said, even though Hisoka is the stronger Nen user overall narratively, Killua is so fast and lightning is such a strong power that Killua does have some possible win conditions over Hisoka. Killua has 2 main win conditions over Hisoka. The first one being hitting Hisoka with a lightning bolt, then stabbing Hisoka while he's paralyzed by the lightning. The second win condition would be using Godspeed, hitting Hisoka with the exact combo onslaught he hit Yuppie with, then hoping that does enough damage to unalive Hisoka. The reality is, both of these win conditions have very notable problems with them, and there's a lot of ways that they could fail. First, it should be noted that Hisoka's Hatsu ability, Bungee Gum, contains the properties of both rubber and gum, meaning the properties of rubber would likely give Hisoka complete immunity to lightning, the same way Luffy from One Piece is immune to lightning. The simplest counter Hisoka would have to Killua's lightning bolt ability would be to use Nen defense Ken, then turn his Ken into bungee gum. This would make it so Hisoka takes 0 damage from Killua's lightning bolt. In the anime, we see Hisoka does something very similar to this during the dodgeball game. After stopping an attack at point blank range, Hisoka flexes his aura and turns his aura to the same color as his bungee gum ability. Seeing how all bungee gum does is turn Hisoka's aura into bungee gum, and considering that he uses this ability so masterfully that he literally tells high-level pros exactly what his ability is, giving them an advantage on purpose, then proceeds to still defeat them anyway, and he does this on a regular basis, it's very likely that Hisoka is narratively skilled enough that he could turn his basic Nen defense aura into bungee gum as well. If Hisoka does this, then Killua's lightning bolts would do 0 damage to him. Now Godspeed, on the other hand, is so fast that Hisoka would not be able to dodge the attacks, but there's a real possibility that Hisoka would be able to block the attacks using Ken defense at full power. This is actually exactly what Gon did when he fought the Owl and Bat Chimera Ants. Gon took dozens of attacks from both Chimera Ants, but because Gon had his Ken defense up and Gon had more aura than both of the ants, Gon took 0 damage from dozens of attacks. If you cannot surpass the Nen output of your opponent's defense, then you cannot significantly damage them with Nen attacks. This was the reason why Gon was able to block Genthru's explosions. Even Killua states that without Nen, he was physically stronger than one of Genthru's goons, but Genthru's minion had more overall aura than Killua did. As a result, Killua states that Genthru's goon was physically stronger than he was. That is because Nen capacity and Nen output make a huge difference in Nen combat. Seeing how Killua has about 3 times less total aura than Morel, and Hisoka is considerably stronger than most of the Zodiac characters that are stronger than Morel, this heavily implies that Hisoka has more total aura than Killua as well. Seeing how Hisoka has more than 3 times as much total aura as Killua, and Nen capacity and Nen output are both factors that are strengthened through time and training, it's very likely that Hisoka with full power Ken defense would scale above the Nen output of Godspeed Killua, meaning Hisoka could very likely survive an entire Godspeed onslaught, and the moment Killua's Godspeed runs out, Hisoka could continue fighting while still being very close to full power. A counter-argument to this is the reality that Killua smacked Youpi around, and people think, wait, do you think that Hisoka has as much durability as Youpi? And the answer is no, but you do not need Youpi's full power durability to survive Killua's Godspeed. You just need to have a higher Nen output than Killua and a method for surviving the electricity. Youpi was the dumbest of all the Royal Guard because he was made from magical beasts instead of humans. As a result, he struggled the most with understanding Nen combat, and he was the only Royal Guard that never displayed N. He might not even know how to use it. Due to the massive strength gap, there's a real possibility that Youpi fought the invasion hunters without prioritizing Nen defense. In some cases, he might not have even been using Nen defense at all, and it's almost guaranteed that Youpi never once put up his Nen Ken defense at full power against the invasion hunters, especially when you consider the fact that the Royal Guard members can all survive attacks from Meruem, even when they're off guard. Realistically, why would Youpi put full power Nen defense up against people who aren't even 10% of his own power, let alone 10% of Meruem's power? Youpi was so much stronger than the invasion hunters that he originally viewed them as garbage, not even worth unaliving. The only time he came close to feeling pain was when he was hit by lightning. Then, immediately after that, it's revealed that Youpi actually took 0 damage. In simpler terms, if Hisoka's full power Ken defense output is higher than Godspeed Killua's Nen output, then Hisoka would guaranteed survive Killua's Godspeed onslaught, and seeing how Hisoka has more than 3 times Killua's total aura capacity and Nen capacity ability and nen output are both skills that require time and training to improve, this becomes very likely. Furthermore, during the dodgeball game, Hisoka blocks an attack while off guard, and he instinctively uses bungee gum to increase his defense power. This implies he might do the same thing during a Godspeed onslaught. Hisoka might not only have his Ken at full power, but he might instinctively turn his Ken into bungee gum. Thus, Killua would get stuck in the bungee gum at the start of the combo, either stopping Killua entirely or weakening Killua's attack power massively. Finally, there were a few narrative elements that imply Godspeed is designed to be used as a finishing move, and if Killua uses Godspeed too early in a fight, it could guarantee his defeat. After his Godspeed ran out against Youpi, Killua ran away and did not use lightning abilities again until he took time to recharge the lightning in his body. Hisoka states that all Hatsu abilities have strengths and weaknesses. The strength of Godspeed is apparent as it pushes Killua's speed beyond his limits. This recharging scene implies that the weakness of Killua's Godspeed ability is that he can no longer use lightning abilities of any kind if he uses Godspeed until it runs out. If Killua wants to use lightning abilities after Godspeed runs out, he needs to first recharge before fighting again. Considering that Nen gives you more power the more you risk, and Godspeed is giving Killua immense power without really risking anything at all, the concept of Killua not being able to use lightning abilities after Godspeed runs out makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider that characters like Kurapika are sacrificing an hour of their life every second just to use his Emperor Time ability, and it barely grants him a fraction of the speed that Godspeed grants Killua. Furthermore, this limitation would also explain why Killua doesn't try to hit Youpi with a second lightning bolt after Godspeed ran out. Killua just immediately runs away and doesn't use lightning of any kind until after he recharges again. This limitation for Godspeed is not 100% confirmed, so let me know your thoughts on this concept. If this limitation is a true reality and Hisoka survives the Godspeed onslaught, then Killua would be left defenseless with zero electricity abilities to use from that moment onwards. Meanwhile, Hisoka would be near full power with all of his abilities. It would then be a near full power Hisoka versus Killua with zero Hatsu abilities. Seeing how Hisoka is narratively lowball equal to Killua's older brother Illumi, the end result would be Hisoka beating the absolute brakes off of Killua. Due to Killua having superior speed to Hisoka, most of Hisoka's win conditions revolve around Hisoka surviving Killua's initial attacks, then destroying Killua after his attacks fail. That being said, a more aggressive win condition for Hisoka would be Hisoka simply unaliving Killua before Killua activates Godspeed. And seeing how Hisoka is overall a considerably more powerful Nen user than Killua, especially without Godspeed, if Killua does not use Godspeed right away, he gives Hisoka a lot of opportunities to defeat him. For example, against Gon, we saw that Hisoka turns his bungee gum invisible, and any attack Hisoka lands, he can also attach bungee gum to you during that attack. So if Hisoka can attach bungee gum to Killua's feet, then Hisoka could take Killua's speed advantage out of the fight altogether. He could trap Killua's feet together and either slow Killua down or immobilize him completely. If they clash kicks, for example, this would be likely to happen. All that being said, Killua is a very powerful hunter. He's a genius who's way beyond where he should be in terms of power at his age. But the reality is, Hisoka is also a genius who is way beyond where he should be in terms of power at his age. The difference is, Hisoka is 14 years older than Killua and has around a decade more Nen experience than Killua does. Killua has spent his entire life up until the moment of removing the Nen needle only fighting people weaker than himself. He was programmed to only fight when he was 100% certain he would win. Hisoka, on the other hand, has done the exact opposite of this and is more similar to a Saiyan from Dragon Ball Z. Instead of only fighting people weaker than himself, Hisoka actively pursues strong opponents, waits for them to become as strong as they possibly can, purposefully gives them all the advantages possible while giving himself himself numerous disadvantages, such as telling his opponents how his abilities work, then Hisoka proceeds to win anyway, and he's been doing this obsessively for countless years on end. He's such a battle junkie that he faked joining the Phantom Troupe just to get closer to fighting a strong opponent. Seeing how a normal hunter like Knuckle had over 5,000 Nen battles, it's hard to imagine the truly immense number of Nen battles Hisoka has won up to this point. Most of Killua's combat experience came from before he learned Nen, so overall, Hisoka is just a far more experienced Nen user than Killua, and as a result, is narratively more likely to beat Killua even before Hisoka got his Postmortem Nen abilities. This is further implied during the election arc. Hisoka is present while Killua uses Godspeed to run away from him and Illumi. After Killua uses Godspeed in front of them, Hisoka is not fazed or worried in the slightest, especially considering that a less battle-obsessed character like Knuckle frequently battled people with unprecedented power. The idea that Killua would be the only unprecedented speedster that Hisoka has ever fought and beaten becomes unlikely. Now, Postmortem Nen Hisoka versus Killua is not even a fight. The lowest you can lowball Postmortem Nen Hisoka is equal to the current Chrollo in the Succession War. As stated earlier, Chrollo is stronger than he's ever been before in his entire life, potentially having 3 Postmortem Nen abilities, making him even stronger than he was when he defeated Hisoka. Despite all this massive power, Chrollo states that if he fights Postmortem Nen Hisoka right now, there's a real chance that Hisoka would unalive him, and Chrollo is currently going on an extremely difficult mission just to develop a new conditional Nen ability and evolve to an even greater level that he's never reached before, just to defeat this Postmortem Nen Hisoka. Seeing how a significantly weaker Chrollo with no bookmark and 0 Postmortem Nen abilities was able to hold his own against the 2 strongest Zoldycks, Zeno and Silva, at the same time, and both Zeno and Silva state that there was a real possibility all 3 of them would have died if the fight continued, there's absolutely nothing Killua would be able to do against Postmortem Nen Hisoka, a character that scales significantly above the weaker Chrollo that Zeno and Silva fought. Postmortem Nen Hisoka is narratively on a completely different level than Killua. It should be noted that during the election arc, Killua's butler Tsubone states that she knew about Killua's Godspeed ability. Despite this, she and Killua's father Silva were still confident that Tsubone could knock Killua out easily, and Killua himself doesn't disagree with this. Furthermore, Morel states, there are numerous ways to defeat people who over-rely on speed. Cheetu versus Morel and Knuckle is one of the best examples in the series of speed alone not being enough to defeat Nen Masters. Despite Cheetu having a clear speed advantage, Knuckle states they can handle it using wits and experience. They then proceed to beat the brakes off of Cheetu. This defeat humbled Cheetu so badly that he began self-reflecting on the concept of Nen battles. Cheetu thinks to himself, so this is Nen. Being fast is not good enough. I need something besides speed. This realization leads to Cheetu getting a new Hatsu ability from Poof later in the Chimera Ant arc. Before Cheetu's battle with Morel and Knuckle, Cheetu attacked a town of normal humans and was stated to be moving faster than 125 miles per hour. Cheetu then reveals he was using his casual speed even against Morel and Knuckle, even though Cheetu recognized that Morel and Knuckle were stronger than the normal humans. This heavily implies that the 125 mile per hour speed he used against the normal humans was his casual speed as well, with Cheetu's top speed being even faster than that. During the election arc, Killua's full power Godspeed traveled speed was calculated to be about 150 miles per hour. Killua was encumbered by Alluka, but to a character that can canonically lift more than a dozen tons, even before learning Nen, carrying someone on his back that weighs less than 1% of his max bench press would almost be unnoticeable, meaning Cheetu's casual travel speed of faster than 125 miles per hour was already relative to Godspeed Killua's full power running speed of 150 miles per hour, with Cheetu's full power running speed being faster faster than is casual. Despite being relative to Godspeed in travel speed, Chi-Tu gets the brakes beaten off of him by every Nen master he comes across because just speed is not enough. Even speed plus a creative Nen ability was not enough for Chi-Tu to defeat Morel, who beat him with superior Nen experience and fighting intelligence. Hunter x Hunter works differently than most battle shonen, so even though Killua is faster than most of the characters in the verse, he's still overall just in between a medium to high level pro hunter. That's why characters like Subone, Silva, Illumi, and Hisoka all treat Killua like he's not a big deal, which explains why even after Killua used Godspeed in front of Illumi and Hisoka still show absolutely zero fear towards Killua. Killua himself states that he thinks Illumi and many members of his family are strong enough to put a needle in his head if he told them all of the secrets of Nanika's powers. Considering Illumi has needles that one-shot kill people, this implies that Illumi is still stronger than Killua as well. Not to mention, all the powerful Zoldycks have completed torture training, so they have the same resistance to lightning that Killua does, meaning many of Killua's lightning-based attacks really would not damage them. And finally, the fact that Killua spent an entire arc running away from Subone, Hisoka, and Illumi is very telling. If he was stronger than all of them, it would have been far easier to just knock them all out rather than run from them for an entire day, especially since he had a speed advantage. Imagine if instead of Subone, Illumi, and Hisoka chasing Killua, it was Leorio, Ramot, and Zushi. Killua, with Godspeed, would have just KO'd all of them, but with Illumi, Subone, and Hisoka, Killua chose to run away the entire time. This all heavily implies that many of the high tier and all of the top tiers are narratively still above Killua as overall Nen users, even though Killua is a genius who has surpassed a lot of them in speed. This is similar to Gon. Gon is a medium tier character who has surpassed some high tiers in attack power due to his rock ability, but he would still lose to them overall. Characters like Shoot, Knuckle, and Morel are all still very capable of defeating Gon, even though Gon's rock ability makes him so powerful that he could one-shot Morel if he lands the attack. This really paints the picture that just having one stat advantage is not enough to accurately predict fights in Hunter x Hunter. It's more based on who is the more powerful Nen user overall. Next, we have Hisoka versus Illumi. Hisoka versus Illumi is very simple. All throughout the series, they are depicted as being relative to one another, but during the election arc, Hisoka ranks Illumi a 95, while Hisoka himself is implied to be a 100. A 95 was enough to impress Hisoka, but then Hisoka gets Postmortem Nen and becomes many magnitudes more powerful than this. Based on Hisoka's own power scale, the normal Hisoka would defeat Illumi extreme difficulty. Then Postmortem Nen Hisoka would decimate Illumi. Now, when it comes to Hisoka versus Zeno, Zeno is the previous head of the Zoldyck family, replaced by Silva. The databooks state that Zeno is a tier above Silva in Nen proficiency, but seeing how Silva is the head of the family, it's likely that Silva is overall slightly more powerful than Zeno. They're a very pragmatic family after all. They likely would only have the best possible choice be the head of the family. If base Hisoka fought Zeno, Hisoka would likely lose to Zeno extreme difficulty. They're both relative to Chrollo, but if you replace Hisoka with Zeno during his death battle with Chrollo, Zeno would have lasted longer. He would have survived the move that killed Hisoka with his Dragon Dive ability pretty easily. Not to mention, Zeno has decades more battle experience than Hisoka does. Narratively, Zeno is more likely to defeat base Hisoka extreme difficulty. Postmortem Nen Hisoka is a different story, however. Lowball, Postmortem Nen Hisoka is equal in power to Chrollo, who's stronger than ever, with a range of 1 to 3 different Postmortem Nen abilities. Meanwhile, Zeno himself said he was not sure if he'd be able to defeat a much weaker Phantom Troupe arc Chrollo, who had 0 Postmortem Nen abilities, if Chrollo fought at full power. Seeing how a weaker Chrollo held his own against Zeno and Silva at the same time, and Chrollo did this while he wasn't even trying to kill Zeno for the beginning portion of the fight, this heavily implies that Postmortem Nen Hisoka would be stronger than Zeno as well, even if you lowball Postmortem Nen Hisoka to just being equal to this new, stronger than ever Chrollo. The highball interpretation of Postmortem Nen Hisoka is that he's so strong that he can defeat the entire Phantom Troupe working together just by himself. That would make Hisoka more relative to Royal Guard characters like Pito, and Zeno would have no chance of victory in a fight like that. A highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka versus Zeno would go very similar to Pito versus Kite. Hisoka would defeat Zeno and take very little damage in the process. Silva is implied to be slightly stronger than Zeno, to the point where his overall power makes up for the fact that Zeno is more skilled than him. Since his father would be capable of defeating Hisoka extreme difficulty, Silva would also accomplish this feat extreme difficulty. Against Postmortem Nen Hisoka, Silva's best chance of victory would be to kill Hisoka while at the same time dying himself in the process. That is Silva's only chance of victory against a lowball Postmortem Nen Hisoka. Against the highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka, Silva would also stand no chance and would lose pretty quickly. Silva himself stated that just defeating one member of the Phantom Troupe was not worth the money and was a difficult mission for him. Defeating highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka would be more difficult than unaliving all of the Phantom Troupe working together. It's simply not something Silva narratively is capable of achieving. There are a few hidden members of the Zoldyck family: Killua's mother, Killua's sister Alluka, Killua's great-grandfather Maha Zoldyck, and his ancestor Zig Zoldyck. Killua's mother has 0 strength feats, but she was so weak that Killua slashed her in the face with 0 Nen experience before the Hunter exams. Based on that alone, she might be even weaker than Kalluto, so she stands no chance against any form of Hisoka. Maha is Zeno's father and is so old that it's implied he's retired from the family business. As stated earlier in the video, Prime Maha was so powerful that he's implied to be relative to Prime Netero. We don't know how strong the current old Maha is, but Prime Maha would destroy Hisoka even if you use the highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka. Maha was relative to Prime Netero, meanwhile Old Man Netero is overall capable of defeating each of the Royal Guard individually due to his immense Nen mastery. Seeing how Prime Netero is twice as powerful as Old Netero, and Old Netero can already defeat the Royal Guard, that means even highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka would stand no chance against Prime Netero or Prime Maha, because highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka is at most just relative to the Royal Guard. Meanwhile, Prime Netero and Prime Maha narratively scale to being roughly twice as powerful as the Royal Guard. In more simple terms, Prime Netero and Prime Maha would both be roughly twice as powerful as Postmortem Nen Hisoka even if you highball him, meaning Prime Maha would beat even the strongest form of Postmortem Nen Hisoka without much difficulty, and against normal Hisoka, it would not even be a fight. It would be an embarrassingly one-sided victory for Prime Maha. Old Man Maha is unquantifiable. He did not age well like Netero. Maha truly looks like an old man and seems to be retired from assassination altogether. He could be weaker than Illumi at this point, or still stronger than Zeno somehow. He has no feats or scaling of any kind, but if he only lost half of his prime power like Netero did, then he would still be able to defeat base normal Hisoka easily, because that would mean Old Man Maha is now just relative to Old Man Netero. So he would still defeat Postmortem Nen Hisoka, even the highball version of Postmortem Nen Hisoka as well. Zig Zoldyck was the Zoldyck that went to the Dark Continent with Netero instead of Maha. We don't know the reason for this. We don't even know the relationship between Zig and Maha. Zig could be Maha's brother or father, but seeing how he went to the Dark Continent with Netero instead of Maha, it could mean that Zig was even stronger than Maha was. We really have zero information on how powerful Zig Zoldyck was. We just know that both Zig and Prime Netero thought that the Dark Continent intro level beasts were too powerful for them, and that Zig is around the same age as Maha, it's very unlikely that Prime Netero would bring a weak Zoldyck with him to the Dark Continent while Maha was also alive, so there's a good argument to be made that Prime Netero, Zig Zoldyck, and Maha were all relative to one another in power. If that's the case, then once again, there's no form of Hisoka that would really stand a chance against Prime Zig Zoldyck. Even the highball interpretation of Postmortem Nen Hisoka would lose badly, and the normal base form Hisoka would get embarrassingly low diffed by Zig Zoldyck. Now, Alluka is just a normal girl. She has zero power of her own and did not go through Zoldyck training. Even weak characters like Zushi could one-shot defeat her, but Nanika is a genie type character. If she hits Hisoka with the rebound from a previous wish, Hisoka would be unalived instantly, and if Killua wished her to, she could one-shot Hisoka instantly as well. The reality is, Nanika is actually the most powerful Zoldyck. She just does not have complete mastery of her powers. So with the help of others making wishes for her, Nanika would be able to one-shot Hisoka, but if the two fought 1v1, Hisoka would just one-shot her without answering her requests or asking for a wish, and that would be the end of the fight. Nanika has a lot of mystery around her, however, and if Hisoka unalives Nanika, he might end up being cursed by her Postmortem Nen and end up being unalived terribly. Nanika's powers are cloaked in mystery because they come from the Dark Continent, and even if Hisoka unalives her, he's almost guaranteed to be unalived by her Postmortem Nen. She's extremely dangerous and has the power of Dark Continent beasts that scale above Meruem. The reality is, if Nanika could use her powers at will, she would no-diff even the strongest form of Hisoka, but she's still just a child who can only use her powers in a genie-type format. So currently, it's likely that Hisoka would defeat her, then Hisoka would be immediately turned to dust by a terrible Postmortem Nen several times more powerful than Meruem. It would truly be a bad situation for Hisoka. So if Hisoka fought Alluka, his best option would be to run away. Even though he's capable of defeating her very easily, that's why Killua spent an entire arc running away from Hisoka and Illumi when he had Alluka. She's very weak, but her potential power is even greater than Meruem. Now, how would these fights go if Hisoka fought each member gauntlet style, one after another? If it's election arc normal Hisoka, he beats everyone until he meets Illumi and would lose to Illumi medium to high difficulty. Killua is so powerful that he would give Hisoka a challenging fight and tire him out enough that Illumi could kill Hisoka without having to go into an extreme difficulty battle. If it's lowball Postmortem Nen Hisoka, a character equal in strength to the newest, most powerful Chrollo, then Hisoka would make it all the way to Zeno. He would kill Maluki, Kalluto, Killua, and Illumi, then he would lose high difficulty to Zeno. If it's highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka, a character stronger than the entire Phantom Troupe working together, then there's a real possibility he kills the entire family gauntlet style. If anything, the Zoldyck's best chance of victory would be hoping Silva could kill the weakened Hisoka while dying at the same time in the process. Now, let's finish this video talking about how it would go if the Zoldycks just decided to jump Hisoka. If the Zoldyck family jumped normal election arc Hisoka, then Hisoka's getting absolutely obliterated. He would probably still kill Miluki due to him just being an actual fodder character, but Hisoka has a 0% chance of victory here. Just Illumi on his own would push Hisoka to an extreme diff battle. Everyone else jumping him at the same time would be overkill. If it's lowball Postmortem Nen Hisoka, Hisoka would still lose, but he's definitely killing a few of the weaker Zoldycks. Maluki and Alluka are not surviving that battle, and Killua is taking considerable damage as well, but the combined might of Illumi, Zeno, and Silva with Godspeed Killua as support would be able to kill Hisoka in a challenging, high difficulty battle. Everyone is taking damage, Killua is severely damaged, but Hisoka would die. If it's highball Postmortem Nen Hisoka, someone stronger than the entire Phantom Troupe, then there's a real possibility the entire Zoldyck family would die as well. Their only chance of victory would be similar to the Gauntlet battle, where Silva, in the very end, pulls off the victory either at 1% HP or kills a weakened Hisoka while Silva dies in the process. A similar plan to what Zeno and Silva had originally planned to do against Chrollo. That's everything I wanted to say. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see ya on the next one.